This is DIB Tech Talk, a show where we make sense of all things cybersecurity for the defense industrial base.
I'm Christina Walker. I'm the Chief of DIB Defense here at NSA Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. We are very new to the DIB space, so I understand that we're the last to be talked to, probably because we're the newest. And so the Collaboration Center only was established in 2020, so we're fairly new to this mission space.
Cool. And what was the impetus behind the establishment of your agency in 2020?
Yeah, so I think we recognize that the cyber landscape had changed very significantly over the last 10 years. And so we have a really good perspective on nation state actors' plans and intentions, but we don't have insight into how they're actually targeting the companies that we care about the most. And so we recognize that we needed to stand up a collaboration center where we could engage with industry partners. We could share what we knew about nation state actors planning to target them, and then they could share with us what they're seeing happening on their actual network so that we can learn together, we can mitigate together, and we can work together to help stop the threat.
So what is the the mission statement or vision of your agency?
So for NSA, our cybersecurity directorate is really focused on preventing and eradicating cyber threats. Eradicate is always a very strong word, and it was intentionally selected because we want to enable those who can defend their networks to do so. And so the Collaboration Center is really designed to harness the power of industry to enable that.
Okay, that's actually really awesome. So you want to enable the DIB. So what kind of services do you provide to the DIB to provide that enablement of the DIB?
Yeah, so we at the Collaboration Center work with what we call the entire ecosystem of the defense industrial base, from the ISP and cloud provider all the way down to the really small business that's in a DoD supply chain. And so what we do varies in that case. So we have a couple of lines of effort. The first one is bi-directional information sharing. So how do we share what it is we know about cyber actors attempting to target networks with those large capable companies, the cybersecurity and technology providers, or those large DIB primes, so that they can action it on their networks. We also then look at, for those smaller businesses that are critical to DoD supply chains, how do we provide cybersecurity services directly to them? We pay for them, they're free and DoD sponsored, so that they can benefit from basic cyber hygiene that they wouldn't be able to necessarily resource themselves. Powered by the intel that NSA has that they alone would not be able to action, very technical information that they don't have that portfolio to action. So we're trying to balance both of those efforts.
Okay, so how do these small businesses get enrolled in these services, or how do they get into this program?
That's a great question, and we were really focused on recognizing that the defense industrial base is 300,000 companies. It's very large, it's a very highly coveted target, and so how do we reach all of them? And so we wanted to lower the threshold as much as we can. So any company that has an active DoD contract, either prime or sub to a contract, and access to non-public DoD information is eligible for any of our services. They can find out more information on cybercenter.nsa.gov. And when they fill out that form, they'll be connected to our team, and we can help them get enrolled in our services.
Okay, and what does it take to get enrolled? Like, what is the actual lift from a company? Do they have to have a cybersecurity professional, or can a three-person company do this as well?
So we looked at piloting lots of commercial services that we think would address the most common techniques we see adversaries use. And so our goal is to really have services that are a little bit of a set it and forget it for those companies that do have that small team. And so protective domain name system service is our first one. We call it PDNS. And essentially, if you're unfamiliar with DNS, it's the phone book of the internet. It's so that you don't have to know every IP address. You can type in a domain and your computer will send you to the right IP. But what we found is that this is a way that actors frequently abuse the internet. They can deliver malware through DNS, they can exfil documents, they can steal information. And so protective DNS essentially leverages a cyber threat feed, a commercial feed, to block traffic to known or suspected malicious sites. And so the technology is very effective for a company. We have contracted with Akamai Technologies to provide this service. We competitively awarded a contract to them to provide it. And so we pay for that company. A company will just enroll in it. And what that looks like is they point their DNS resolutions to Akamai, they run them through the threat feed, and they block traffic that would be malicious. On the back end, NSA feeds in indicators we know are bad to enhance the blocking. We run analytics to identify things that might be bad that a company wouldn't know. But from a company's perspective, they enroll, they work with Akamai to set up their IP to resolve to theirs, and they never see anything else. They don't have to have that technical expertise to action our information.
So what happens if an essential website that a small business needs to access is accidentally blocked through this service? This happens with most cybersecurity controls, right? Like it's too annoying for the user, so they turn it off or don't use it. Is there a way to get past that or to get an exception?
Yeah, so companies, it's very flexible, and companies will work with Akamai to enroll. They have access to a dashboard that allows them to whitelist and blacklist certain websites. So if there's something that they know they have to get to, they also can, implement their own company's controls for, say, gambling sites or something like that to put those on there as well. So it's very flexible from an implementation perspective.
That's great. And so you said they have access to a dashboard. So are they able to see the successes of this as well so that they understand the goodness behind why they're doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. So they will get to see their own from the broader perspective. The reason that we offer this service is we ran a 6-month pilot. We enrolled about 40 companies in the service, and we found that over the course of 6 months, it processed 7 billion DNS resolution attempts and blocked 16 million as malicious or suspected malicious. So we realized very quickly that this was a useful site. So we want a company to be able to see how it's working and how it's protecting them.
Okay, and so with the DoD trying to roll out the CMMC and mandating NIST 800-171, how should companies identify that they are procuring this service and some other services from NSA? Are these services mapped to NIST 800-171 so the companies can say, hey, we have this and it's meeting these requirements?
Yes, so for that service, it fulfills the DNS filtering requirement. One of the other requirements in NIST 171 is scanning of your public-facing assets. So that's another service that NSA offers. Again, leveraging commercial scanning services. So there's many services that scan the internet looking for vulnerabilities. What hardware and software is exposed to the internet that you as a company may know about or not know about? And how do you know if they're vulnerable? And so our service is really, in addition to being compliant with NIST 171, is designed to help a company identify where they might have assets they didn't know about, where they might be vulnerable, and then help them mitigate and prioritize based off what we know nation-state actors are targeting. So we recognize, especially for the small business, there's a bit of patch fatigue. And so what should I prioritize when? And so our goal is to give a report to them that's very specific. Here's what we found. You might not have been aware that this was exposed. And then here's specific mitigations you should take, and we prioritize them based off the severity of the vulnerability and also how much we see them being exploited.
So what happens if a company, because I can just see a small business, the wheels spinning in their head, okay, what happens if you guys find a vulnerability that maybe we should have patched or we thought we patched and we didn't? Are they going to get in trouble if you guys find something that maybe should have been fixed already?
No, that's a great question, and I think one of my favorite parts of working at NSA's Collaboration Center, because our goal and our mission is purely collaborative in nature. We want to share information with you, and we want to learn about what companies know, and so we will remind them of contract requirements to do certain things, but we're never aware of what specific requirements they have. Generally, from these services, we wouldn't know things like if CUI was impacted, but companies know what their contractual requirements are, but we are not in that role of enforcing contract requirements.
Okay, that makes sense. Hopefully that alleviates some fears. But what happens if a company doesn't have the resources necessary to fix some of these maybe high priority, huge threat issues that they really need to fix? Do you guys help them find resources to fix it?
Yeah, our goal is to help them find the resources to fix it and give implementation guidance that is easy for them to interpret. We also have been expanding our work with managed service providers. And so we've worked out where a company is not managing their own services, where we can work with both them and the managed service provider if they both agree with that, so that we can enable the managed service provider to help them in that space.
Okay, so you said earlier that DIB is 300,000 companies. Are you guys able to scale? If every single company was like, yes, we want to do this, is this going to create a bottleneck?
So the benefit of us using commercial services is that they're incredibly scalable. And so we're positioned now to scale to thousands of companies. We have about 100 enrolled now, but commercial services, these companies do this every day. And so when we can partner with them, they have the ability to scale out. One of the other things that we do in the Collaboration Center is, I mentioned briefly, we work with the technology and cybersecurity providers to the defense industrial base, recognizing that when we can share something with an ISP or a cloud provider, they can update an their antivirus software at scale and protect, not only the DIB, but broader critical infrastructure. And so those are really our two efforts to scale. One, we work with the providers that are higher up in the ecosystem, and two, scale out these services that are commercially available and very scalable to as many small businesses as we can.
What happens if a company already has an MSP or somebody that they didn't know was working with NSA and they come to you to get some of these services? Do they then not have to pay for services that they were paying for? Or what if they have an MSP that's not in the program? Do they get any benefit, or do they need to switch MSPs or other providers that they may not be part of NSA's program?
Yeah. So we focus on trying to work with the providers that support the broadest population of the DIB. That is something that we work with. We also try to push as much information out publicly as we can. So in the example of protective DNS, we put out a cybersecurity information sheet that's available on nsa.gov/cybersecurity that talks about how you should go about selecting one if you don't want to enroll in necessarily ours, how you should select one, what criteria you'd want to look at, and some of the vendors that meet that criteria. So we're always looking to put out guidance to help a company. If they want to do it on their own, we really just want them to have it and have that protection. We've also piloted some additional options where if a company already has a service and they have logs, we can just run it through NSA's IOC checks to say, is there anything else we would have found so that you could benefit from that? And so we have a couple of options that we work in that case.
Okay, so being in the private sector, I have to ask, how do MSPs or other providers approach NSA about trying to get involved? Like maybe it's a smaller MSP, but all of their clients are DIB companies. Is there a way to approach NSA to get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned the website earlier, cybercenter.nsa.gov. That's how companies can reach into us, and we can hold meetings with them, identify what customer base they support, and if they would be a great partner for us. So we do that daily. We have over 220 industry partners now at the Collaboration Center from about 2 a year and a half ago. So we've really rapidly scaled those partnerships, looking for really the highest impact partners. So our mission is focused on the defense industrial base and really protecting DoD information on DIB networks. And so we want to work with the companies that can help enable us do that, and then work with our interagency partners to support the broader sectors.
That's awesome. So I have your info sheet about the offerings. So the threat intelligence collaboration, is that something that's kind of sprinkled throughout these other offerings, or is that a completely different offering?
So we created that as a different offering, recognizing, I mentioned we're trying to push as much information publicly, but I recognize that most people don't wake up in the morning and visit NSA's website for cybersecurity advisories. And so we knew we needed a push mechanism. And so again, leveraging commercial collaboration platforms that industry is already using, we basically set up a collaboration channel with partners. So it's a place where we find results from either of the other services, we can push that to the partner. We will share both public and non-public cybersecurity advisories with cybersecurity teams at these companies. And it's a place where they can come in and ask us questions. They say, I'm seeing this on my network. I'm not sure what it is. Do you know anything more? So it's a place where they have access to NSA analysts where we can talk about what they're seeing and help them defend their networks. So that one is separate from the other services, but it's really just a place to collaborate with us.
And so all of these services are available to all of the DIB, right? Or is there a different tier that's eligible for some and not others?
So we do partner with those large prime defense contractors in a more bilateral collaborative nature. We have agreements with them to enable sharing because we're learning from them just like they're learning from us. But any defense contractor who has an active DoD contract can have access to NSA information and participate in any of the 3 services I described.
Okay, so this threat information with access to analysts, is this like real time, or is it 24 hours, or like how if they submit a question, will they hear back a month from now or next week or 3 business days? How does that work?
So they're really collaborative conversations, and so we try not to throw an IOC over the fence and then get an answer back. We want to be talking to them in real time. So we have companies come in on weekends, overnight, and we have a whole team that's designed to manage these relationships and try to get responses as fast as possible. On the threat intelligence collaboration, it is generally technical information that we're sharing. So it does require, more technical people at the companies. That's why some of the smaller businesses that don't want to be in that space or don't actually, fund their own cybersecurity teams would not necessarily want to have, technical NSA information. They could receive it, but if they can't action it because they're not managing the network, that wouldn't be as valuable to them. So we really are focused on the net defenders who are managing the networks to collaborate with our analysts in that type of channel.
Is there a limit on the information that, like, let's say, an IT guy at a small company gets this great information and he finds it super useful. Can he go to Reddit and post this information or share it with his other IT friends who do get up every day and read NSA alerts? Because there are, online communities that share this information. Is that... I mean, I get up and read defense cybersecurity news, so it's not far-fetched that people do this as well. So are they allowed to share it, or is it like, are they bound by an agreement to not share?
That's a great question. So all of our partnerships are protected under non-disclosure agreements, which protect both the information we're sharing as well as information companies share with us. So they enter into the non-disclosure agreement with us, and then we leverage the traffic light protocol TLP markings for anything we share. So we will mark something TLP green if they can share it with their buddy or their friend who's in their blog. TLP amber is the more restrictive sharing where they can use it internally to defend their networks but not share it publicly. And obviously TLP red, that is used for really restrictive sharing that only they can have the information.
Do you have any recent or examples in the last 2 years, since 2020, I guess, of successes of this program that is, led to protecting an organization that otherwise would have potentially been, had information exfiltrated in some way?
Yeah, so we've had, for being fairly new, we've had a lot of successes in this space. And so recognizing that it's built under trust, that when we can share information with, say, an ISP about a malicious actor abusing their platform, and they can then validate it on their aperture, they're willing to take action. So we've had cases where, a small business might be impacted, somebody we aren't partnered with, somebody that when I call and say, I'm from the NSA and here to help, they don't call me back. We can work with that ISP and say, we see this activity, we believe it's a nation state actor. When they can validate it on their networks, we've seen them null route the traffic. And so they're protecting the company from exfil without me ever partnering directly with them. So we've seen that at scale where when we can share information with those big providers, they can take action to protect the DIB. The defense industrial base primes, very similar. We can run analytics over their log data, and we've had cases for protective DNS where we had a company enrolled, and the DNS resolution was not being blocked because it was not inherently bad, but our analytics identified that the behavior of the callouts was consistent with malware. And so when we shared that information with the company and they kind of dug in and looked for it, they actually found there was some malware on their network. The benefit of that is they can share that information back with us, and we put that then on block for all of the other 100 companies enrolled. So it's a very iterative process with those larger companies, but we've seen great success that's protecting at scale, both from the services and from the partnerships with the larger technology providers.
That's fantastic. So, you mentioned that you call some people and you say, I'm with the NSA, I'm here to help, and they don't call you back. Have you, what is, I guess, the biggest hurdle that you have to overcome with convincing the DIB or certain companies to work with you? Or have you faced any, getting people to believe that it's not a prank call? Is that the only bump in the road, or are there other concerns that the DIB might have that you've overcome with some?
Yeah, I think, when we started, I recognized that we're very new in this space. And so most people are not familiar with NSA's cybersecurity mission. But, we've spent years, securing military communications and DoD communications and using our intelligence to feed policymakers to make decisions. And so in this new space, we're trying to feed that information to companies who can action it in industry, who are also protecting DoD. And so it is a new space that we're in, and it's really built on trust. And so, some of those larger defense contractors who are more experienced with the intelligence community and DoD have formed relationships quickly. I think a lot of them came in saying, let's see what happens. I'm used to sending a lot of information to the government and not hearing a lot back. And so we are really trying to change the culture here of let's push as much as we can. And so that's why they've stayed. So I mentioned the non-disclosure agreements have been, part of it where they're collaborative. A company can walk away at any point if we're not showing value to them. And so the trust and, honoring what we said we're going to do has kept the partnerships going. But the smaller businesses we recognize are harder to reach. They're very focused on making one part that goes into a larger weapon system, and they don't know about DoD acquisitions, they don't know about the government. And so we have been, talking to you and talking to different forums where there's a bit of a trust relationship with the companies. So we're doing a lot of work with the services, their small business offices. We're working a lot with the ISACs, going out to different communities with the combatant commands to reach the companies that they know are most important. So we want to secure the most important companies. The question is, who are they? And so how we know is we go out through, acquisition and sustainment. We go to the combatant commands, we go to the services and say, who's most important to you? Let us tell them about our program. And so that's really what we've been trying to do over the last year.
That's awesome. That must be a lot of fun to get to go visit all the COCOMs. I just have one major question. What about OT? Do you have anything that helps companies that don't just have an IT infrastructure but have an OT infrastructure?
That's a great question, and definitely something that the department is focused on, and we're looking to focus on more. You'll see there was a cybersecurity advisory that went out a couple months back about threats to industrial control systems. So we are pivoting to that space to say, how can we help support threat intelligence related to OT, and what are the cybersecurity services that we potentially could offer in that space? We're really focused on, let's look at what are the most common techniques the adversary is using, and then what are the low cost and scalable solutions that can solve it. And so we're piloting new technologies all the time and are definitely looking at the OT space, knowing that it's a concern.
Yeah, I think most agencies are beginning to focus on these ICSs and OTs. Is there anything else about your office or what you guys do that we haven't talked about that you really want to make sure people know about?
No, I think we just want to make sure people know about us and know that we exist, know that we're here to help and we want to collaborate with them, and demystify NSA in this space and bring about awareness of the fact that we are under DoD. DoD has endorsed our program as the Sector Risk Management Agency for DIB. DoD is leveraging NSA as another part of that operational arm. And so the more awareness we can get on that, the better. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.